Hey guys, today we're going to be using some really easy to achieve techniques to get some really realistic stonework effects for the Bleak Barrow Terrain set. So these are going to be some really straightforward ideas, just anyone can do it, anyone can replicate it. Quick shout out first to Lockie from Zorp who gave me the idea for how to achieve the colour scheme. But yeah, so jumping in, the easiest way to get a reference for this is just going to be to jump in the game in Skyrim. So we're seeing that there's a lot of very light and very brown tones, but when you have a candlelight spell cast, you can see it is a very grey finish, with lots of greens and lots of earthy tones baked into it. And you can see the striations in the natural stonework. It looks like it's sediment that's built up over a long period of time. Got to remember, it's not like a hand-built dungeon, it's like carved out of the rock face. That's what we're going to be going for. First thing to go for before you do anything is to look at what paint you're going to use. For terrain, it's too expensive for me to be using model paint for everything, for all the stuff I do. So I'm going to be using these artiste paints in the UK. These are just cheap craft paints. We've got a burnt umber, a jungle green, a yellow ochre, spring green, white and dark grey. We're going to start with the yellow ochre, the jungle green and the burnt umber to just pick out some random bits, some random sections of stonework and just paint them over that to do an undertone. So starting off with the yellow ochre here, I'm just picking out loads of little bricks and just pulling it all out, picking out little sections and just giving them that variation of colour. You might think I'm a madman here, that it looks strange, but we're going to blend this all together with some dry brushes and some washes later on. It'll all look splendid. So with these stones here, with the yellow ochre I did need to do a couple of thin coats here, but we're just picking out random stonework, little sections and any random bits really. Just try not to do it in any reasonable pattern, because then it will look a bit off. It needs to look like random sediment that's built over time or rocks that have been sourced from loads of different places. I'm coming in here with the brown now, the burnt umber, and putting this on in a nice little thin coat. Again, just exactly the same thing. I'm just picking out some random sections and just painting them on it. They don't have to be bricks, it can just be little jutting sections of the rock face itself to look like it's a different bit of rock that's built up, or a different type of sediment. Coming in now with the green for the last colour we're using. This is the jungle green from the artiste paints I was using. Again, just pulling out random sections. It's going to look strange and it's going to feel wrong, but trust me, it's going to look amazing when it's done. You've got to try not to overdo it as well. Like, it gets really tempting to put loads on, but you want the grey to still be the fundamental part of the rock. You don't want it looking like a colouring book too much. Don't forget to do bits on the bottom as well. I think that's supposed to be a moss finish, but looking on the website for it, it didn't look like it was painted particularly mossy on there. There's that rough section, so I just painted it as if it was rock, a different layer, where the ground is meeting the actual walls itself. Once you've done that, you're going to want to pick a colour as close as possible to your undercoat. I actually undercoated this with Mechanica Standard Grey from Games Workshop. I don't actually have that as a pot of paint at the minute, so I've gone for Vallejo London Grey, and I'm just dry brushing that over the top quite heavily, just to try and blend those earthy tones into the rest of the stone face. Don't be afraid if you get it on any other bits or anything like that. I mean, ideally you'll be using an absolute colour match to your undercoat, but not necessarily. So now I'm using it's just the lighter grey, the in between your base coat and white, and I'm just going to dry brush this over absolutely everything. Nice heavy dry brush, really heavy. Work it in there, do it in little circles if you need to. You still want to get as much of the moisture off as you can, but like a little bit less than if you were doing a more delicate dry brush. You just want to get it absolutely everywhere. Coat this thing in this colour so only the deepest recesses are covered. You'll feel like you're getting rid of all of that undertoning you did with all the random colours, but don't worry, those earthy tones are still going to pop through in the finished model. We don't really want those earthy tones to be super bright. We're going to work them back and back and back until they're just a subtle high. Now we're coming in with the white, and we're just going in for another dry brush over the front of everything. This is a much lighter dry brush, but it's still not incredibly light. It's I'd say it's more what you would normally be doing to dry brush. Also, once you've done all of that and gone over it in white, you then want to go over all the circly bits, the little twizzly bits, and all of the bits that you painted yellow ochre, and paint them with them, give them a heavier dry brush, like a second coating of the white. Just to accentuate them, and just in the finished model it'll just draw the eye to them a little bit better and make those detailed sections pop. And for the yellow ochre, it's just a case of it can stand out a little bit too much, so I like to blend it in a little bit more just with a bit of extra white. Now we're going to come in with the spring green. This is just a really bright green, and all we're going to do is look for all these crevices along here, and we're going to just paint some green into there. We're doing this after the dry brush so it isn't blended in, so it does leave sort of a mossy effect. And this is going to break everything up just a little bit more and just be really nice. You don't need to be neat with this. Just into some of the recesses and some of the edges, you just want to slop some of this green on there. It's just going to look great. In between the stonework, and don't be afraid to put it into the spirals, just anywhere and everywhere. When you look at the source images on Skyrim itself, pretty much all the rocks in these in the Bleak Barrow cave have this constant bright green moss on it. So I wanted to go quite close to it, but not too far off. Once that dries, you're going to want to wash it. Now you could use something like Nuln Oil, but that's crazy expensive, so I mix my own wash. I'll put a link to a video with a recipe on there if you want to try and make your own. I would say Nuln Oil is probably going to be a bit too dark, so I'd probably either water it down or... yeah, I'll probably just say water it down. Water down some Nuln Oil, and it's going to be a bit better just because you don't want it to darken it all too much. You still want it to be reasonably bright stone, and you don't want to soften the undertones too much. But as soon as you slop this this wash over, you suddenly feel a bit like a god, and it just all starts to pull together. But yeah, you don't need to be neat at all. You don't need to worry about which sections. It's just going over everything. Just slop it on, and then you can just wipe your brush and then dab it a bit on there to catch anywhere where it's pooling too much and build it up. Now we're looking at the puzzle door itself now, and there was a bit of a debate on a post I did on the Elder Scrolls Call to Arms Facebook page of whether this is iron or stone. It makes a stone sound, so I've decided to paint it as a dark stone, but you could say it's just a non-metallic iron the way that we're going to do it. Also with the actual key mechanics, like those owls there and the claw, those are whatever colour the key door is, so it'll be gold if it's the golden claw. So now we've mixed some white with a little bit of white with some black, and we're just slopping that over all of the door. This is similar to the colour Vallejo Heavy Charcoal, which is what I try to colour match to, just because black's a bit too dark for what we're going to, and we're going to be washing and dry brushing it as well. This is just going to be a nice little base. Just slop it on there and go in there with a neater brush just to pick out the edges where it connects the stonework, but just try and be very careful not to get it on there. Also at this point I painted the edges of all of the wall sections with this same colour, just so that they don't stand out, because the sections don't meet like 100% all the time when you're building it up. So just want to darken it down just to not draw attention to these flat sections. Wipe off any excess with your finger, make sure it doesn't dry or ruin any of that lovely stonework you've done. You then want to slop Nuln Oil specifically onto this puzzle door, just to bring out those recesses and darken it down. And when you're leaving it to set, you want to leave it to set facing flat so that it doesn't run down to the bottom. You want it to fill into all of these nice little grooves and all this detail to accentuate that. Go in there with your finer brush again just to work it around the edges. Careful not to get too much onto the edges. Now I'm giving a very light dry brush of Vallejo London Grey over the whole of the door now. Just quite lightly, just to bring out that effect and that texture on it itself, just to make it pop a little bit more. Don't need to spend ages on this, just a nice little dry brush, just focusing on those raised surfaces of the curves and on the pattern itself. I then gave a base coat of Steel Legion Drab to the key bits, and then went over it with some P3 brass. Any sort of dark gold or light brass will do for this. Just as your base coat for your gold, just water that down a bit and just slop it onto the puzzle part, whatever you call them. Once that's dried, you just want to give it a nice coat of Agrax Earthshade. I would normally do this with Gullum and Flesh, but I want this to look like tired and old gold, like it's been sat in the ruins for quite a long time. So yeah, just give it a nice coat of that, make sure it doesn't pool too much, so go back in with a dry brush and soak up anywhere where it's pooling too much, just to catch that. We're now going to go back in with the Formula P3 brass, and we're just going to give a bit of a dry brush over the top of it again, just to bring out the raised surfaces and create a bit more of a stronger contrast. Nothing too fancy. Now when we're looking at the draugar are very, very light grey. I've seen them painted more browny, and I can understand that. I think I'm going to go for something a little bit similar to that, just so it breaks them up. But yeah, and you can see there's a lot in the cloth as well. There's a lot of different tones in the cloth, but I didn't want to bring too much attention. You've got to be careful when you're painting terrain not to make the terrain more exciting than the minis that are going to be on it. So I decided to go with something very basic. But yeah, so to start with, for the draugar, I'm going to put some Nuln Oil into the recess bits just to create a bit more of an illusion of depth, just to make this darker. This is why we didn't dry brush this bit white, we want it to be darker. I then went in with some blue-grey pale from Vallejo, watered that down a bit and gave a nice base coat over the draugar themselves. Just be careful when you're doing this not to get it on any of your stonework. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's only terrain, remember? Now we're going over it with a very light dry brush of some white, just to bring out the raised surfaces. I got a little bit on the back there, I'll just fix that with a little bit of grey and a little drop of Nuln Oil. Fortunately it was in a bit of a crevice, so it wasn't very noticeable. We're then going to go over with some Steel Legion Drab over all the fabric sections, just a nice base coat. I did it in 2 thin coats on this one, which I'd always recommend if you're doing a base, especially a lighter colour over a darker colour, and it came out quite nice. And again, be careful just not to get any of the Steel Legion Drab on any of the ruins or any of the bits of the draugar either, where the one with just his head poking out. We've now got a dry brush of Xandri Dust from Games Workshop over the top of all of these fabric sections, just to bring out that raised detail a bit, but nothing too stark a contrast. I'll sound like a broken record here, but just again, really careful you don't get any of this on any of the other sections. Since we've blended it in, it's a real pain in the bum to fix it if you do make a mistake here, so just nice and careful with your dry brush. We're then giving a coat of Agrax Earthshade over all of the draugar and the cloth sections themselves. Careful it doesn't pull too much in any particular area, but yeah, just a nice good coat of Agrax, and that'll finish them off. So I finished off all the walls once all that was dry with a coat of varnish. I go for AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish, which I airbrush on. You can brush this one on as well, or you can use whichever matte varnish you prefer. You don't have to varnish, of course, just with it being terrain. Well, to be honest, I varnish anything, but with it being terrain, you don't want to scratch your paint job off later. So I like to varnish a lot of things. So that's it done, and on a kill team board just to have a look at it. And I was so happy with this when it was done. It just kept giving me so many ideas. I'm probably going to end up using this more for Dungeons and Dragons than I do for playing this new Skyrim game. But yeah, just look at them, they're so good. And all the little connectors, you can build any size room you want. You can lay it out however you want. You could build corridors, you could build a cavern. I think I'm probably going to pick up quite a bit more of this terrain, to be honest. I might pick up another one of these big sets. Just for making some really big boards of it, and they fit together really nicely, and it all just goes together really well. So happy with this. This is one of my favourite terrain purchases in quite a long time. Loads of little weird angles you can do by putting the corner sections together, of course, as well. And I just get such chills when you see in the Skyrim board recreated on the tabletop. It's amazing. Makes me so happy. Now that was a really fun project to get done. I really love painting terrain because it's just such an easy win. You get it all knocked out in next to no time. I think I spent about 14 hours total on these walls, so just a day and a bit. And yeah, you just feel so happy with yourself having such a big pile of stuff done rather than like 4 or 5 models that you might paint in a day. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. The detail on this stuff's great as well. I'm really pleased with this set. For how much it cost as well, really can't be faulted. And it really does make me excited for everything else that's coming out in this Skyrim range. So in terms of the next videos, we've got a video on the rest of the Bleak Falls Barrow stuff, which maybe 1, maybe 2 videos, depends how long it takes. So for all the chests, the objective markers, and the big stone archway that comes in it. I'm going to throw a link to Modiphius' website in the video description as well. So that you can go and check all this stuff out yourself if you want to have a better look at it. And then following on from that, there's also the miniatures for this game as well. So there's a set that comes with the draugar and the dragonborn, and there's a set that comes with imperials and a set of stormcloaks. Now I actually pre-ordered them through a different place. I got these direct off Modiphius, and the other stuff I bought through a retailer. So with everything that's going on, I'm still waiting on getting hold of them. But as soon as I get hold of them, I'm going to make another painting tutorial for each of those as well. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Really excited by all this Elder Scrolls miniature stuff. So let me know what you think if you want to see more Elder Scrolls stuff. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to